You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here, to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over the U.S. Each week we will get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? Well, on the show today, we have Adam Davidson. Hey, Adam, how's it going?
It is great. I am great. Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, I've known you for all of, minutes because we just chatted a little bit before we push record, and I already think you're a super cool guy. So I think the listeners are in for a treat.
Well, I hope that they think that I'm as cool as you do, and I'm just glad to be here and, talk about bikes.
Yeah. I think there's like 3 topics I want to hit. Bikepacking is something that I've seen tons of photos of you doing, so I want to talk about that. And also how you were able to get your daughter to join you on some of these adventures, which I think is so cool. So I'm pretty excited for you to talk about that.
Yeah, it's a big part of our lives,
Yeah.
and I look forward to sharing that. And it does not come free, and I mean like spiritually, like it is investment. So I definitely look forward to elaborating on that.
Cool. And then the other topic is where you live. And we've talked a little bit about that before we push record. So let me start out by asking you, let me back up a step and ask you how you got into cycling as an adult.
It didn't start as an adult for me. I was riding bikes since I was, 5 or whatever on a, coaster brake, 20-inch as a child. And then I had a, department store mountain bike. And as a kid, this is an important fact for me, is that I grew up really overweight. I was a very overweight kid and like obese. I still loved mountain biking, and I did it, in that physical state as a kid. When I was 13, I got my first real mountain bike, a Specialized rock hopper, as a gift from my grandfather. And it was like the big deal gift that I'd been wanting for years. And 2 years later, after riding that, I was still, in the physical condition that I was in. I struggled to ever, shed weight. I was a big dude as a kid. And instead of summer camp one year, I went on this trip to Colorado with that same mountain bike, with the rock hopper. Spent a month out here. When I was doing that, I realized that this is the place that I wanted to end up. I wanted to live out here. I fell in love with this whole area. And, 15-year-old Adam goes back to Massachusetts, where I grew up. And, over the next 2 years, I'm still just existing. I ride bikes a ton, but I am not a fit young cyclist. That's not who I was. Period. End of story. I was like Adam Davidson, video games, junk food, happens to ride mountain bikes a lot. Then when I was 17, this is where the bike kind of took a twist for me. So I started out where I just loved to ride bikes for fun. I loved being in the woods. I grew up with camping, all these things. And then when I was 17, something just switched in my brain, and I started realizing this is not I am who I want to be, but this is not what I want to be. And I wanted to be more fit. And so I used the bicycle, just completely transform myself. And I rode all the time, and I ended up eating different food, and I wasn't following a diet. I was just doing what made sense to me. And I lost 85 pounds in a year.
Wow.
To the tune of, this was started right after junior year. Through the summer, the friends that I hadn't seen over the summer did not know who I was when I went back to school. And it was literally all on the bike. I mean, hours and hours and hours every single day on the bike. I worked in a bike shop at that time. And that is when the bicycle really cemented itself as one of these central physical items that sparked my spirit and became part of my life. I mean, it was a piece of my life before, but since then, the bike has been a key aspect of my wellness in so many ways. I mean, before doing that, it was my entertainment, and thus some mental health and some physical health to a degree. And then after that transformation, it became part of everything. And then that, maybe it was a more mature perspective on what the bicycle was capable of beyond just being a toy or whatever. But then that is what brings me into, the bicycle as an adult. I was 17, I lost a ton of weight, still being the person I am today mentally, but, then, left Massachusetts, went to college in Colorado, rode bikes, raced for the team in northern Colorado, and then the rest is history.
Wow, that is like an epic lifestyle change, especially to have as a teenager, and then to have it stick throughout the rest of your life. Like that should be a book right there.
Well, I mean, I can sum it up, which is if somebody wants to change their life, whether it's to lose weight or anything, if they're going to change something that is a substantial habit, make sure that whatever you're changing it to is something you enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever it is, that's what made it easy.
Right.
It's easy to go ride your bike for 4 hours at a time. And boy, is that privilege. I mean, there's a lot of layers of privilege in the inspiration for doing that. The fact that I had this mountain bike, that I got to go out to Colorado. I mean, there's all these layers of things that I was really fortunate to get to do.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to ride my bike forever was definitely one of those things. But yeah, make it fun, and it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's never easy. Yeah.
And speaking of enjoying it, right, so you're in Massachusetts, then you end up in Colorado, and I do believe you are still in Colorado.
Yes, I am in Colorado.
And that brings me to the next question, or the next statement. Tell us a bit about where you live and what cycling is like there.
Yeah, so I live in good old Pueblo, Colorado.
That's such a hard word to say. Is it Pueblo? Pueblo?
It's Pueblo.
Pueblo.
It's a Spanish word, and it means town.
Town, okay.
And Pueblo is an interesting little town in southern Colorado because it is right along the Arkansas River, to elaborate for those that are unfamiliar. And it is an old steel town. It used to be like the Detroit of the West, and lots and lots of steel for major projects was made here. I mean, like the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm pretty sure the steel for that was made in Pueblo, Colorado, and lots of rail for the railroads throughout the United States. In the 80s, there was a big bust where a lot of those jobs were lost, production went way down, and so Pueblo experienced the downturn similar to what happened in like the Rust Belt of different areas where there's fewer jobs and things. Mm-hmm. And so, the rest of Colorado has had, different types of industry and different types of growth, and Pueblo has had this very blue-collar, hard-working identity for a very long time. And so it's this really unique microcosm of lots of different cultures, very like tightly knit pride in like being here for a lot of people. And a lot of people that live in Pueblo have been here for a very long time. Mm-hmm. There's this really gritty, cool, like try hard mentality in Pueblo. And the cycling scene here ties into that in its own way. Because Pueblo doesn't have, like doctors and lawyers and rich people that have, 3 different $4,000 bikes and whatever, it doesn't have that type of cycling culture. It has these like pockets of people that get out a lot, and then, a few small like circles that surround each of the bike shops. And the people that started those bike shops are the same people that 15, 20 years ago spent hundreds of hours out at Lake Pueblo State Park building trails.
Oh, nice. Okay.
There was this hardcore group of people that were volunteering their time, and it's the same group of people that effectively started the current nonprofit of Southern Colorado Trail Builders. And they talked with the state park way back then and said, hey, can we build some bike trails out here? And they said, in a nutshell, yeah, that'd be great. And so now we have a 45-mile trail system, Singletrack.
Wow.
Within 7 miles of downtown. It's arguably one of the densest trail systems of its length in the state. It almost all overlooks this huge reservoir that is part of the Arkansas River because it's a dammed reservoir, and it's all right there. And it's this varied terrain of big, chunky, rocky little mini canyon things, and then long, flowing single track. There's this culture of people that will get out there and just put long days in, and you'll run across somebody, and they might be a person who is out there for a 5-mile ride on a department store bike, or another person who's been riding all day and has put in 70 miles out there or something, and you never really know the difference when you're riding out at Lake Pueblo. It's like I said, the scene here is a different animal than a lot of other places that I've ever lived. So you have that mountain bike scene, that kind of like gritty, do-it-yourself history to the mountain bike scene here, where you had this group of folks that they were just going out there and working as volunteers, building these trails. And then on the flip side of that, Pueblo has a like pretty thriving triathlete scene, especially for a city of this size, which I think was really surprising when we first moved here. That really stood out to me. There's a lot of very diehard like triathlon endurance athletes, like Ironmen, Iron Women, that really get after it. And I'm not part of that scene, but man, do I have respect for them. Those are the folks that I will recognize, and I'll see them out there, whether I'm on a run or a ride or whatever, and they've been going forever. And then we have the Trans-America route. If you're not familiar with the Trans-America route, it's like, just for your listeners, it's one of the most popular coast-to-coast bicycle touring routes. It sure is a popular one. Pueblo is like the biggest city on the whole route.
Oh.
And this is what I've been told. So, I mean, Pueblo is, one of the biggest cities on there. It's almost right at the center. And the route practically goes right through the center of town. When you're on the Trans Am route, you're going to go past Lake Pueblo, you go right along the Arkansas, you see pretty much the whole town. The crazy thing about Pueblo, and I feel like this is one of the things that sums up Pueblo's identity for cyclists, is that you have people in Pueblo that ride bikes and love bikes that have no idea that even exists, whether they ride road bikes or not. I mean, that is an epic thing to have in your town, that route goes right through town.
Right.
You have people that have no idea that it exists. And then you have like diehards that are like, have hosted 500 warm showers. So that's Pueblo. In the different aspects of the bike culture here. We also have some neat stuff happening right now where there's a guy in town who's been doing a whole lot of work to get local people who are either transient or unhoused at the moment onto bikes so they have transportation so they can get jobs. And he's been having a lot of success doing that. And that's something that I've really been respecting, seeing, again, the bicycle being used for more than just the toy. Like, it really is giving people agency.
Well, I want to clarify, did you actually say 45 miles or 4 or 5 miles?
45.
So that's...
As in 5 less than 50.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing because that's an epic trail system for that to exist and that someone's maintaining it. I'm assuming that you still have a crew that is volunteer that's keeping that alive.
The land at the state park out here, the trails were built with permission, but the ownership of that land is really complicated. And so what had happened is that essentially the permission was granted, but it wasn't from the right group, and no one really realized that until much later.
Sure.
And so the trails, it's not illegal to be on them, but they technically didn't exist, technically. And so the organization that does maintain those trails now, which is Southern Colorado Trail Builders, and I'm the current president of that. And that being said, there's been a lot of people who have put in a lot of hard work to get everything to where it is now. So the trails out there, we've been doing a lot of hard work on the diplomacy and political side of things to work through all the layers of ensuring that those trails are recognized officially and legally. And so we've been able to build partnerships with the landowning agencies now to where we are on track for that to be, not only recognized, but also much more sustainable, because we're now going to have these like partnering agencies working alongside local volunteers. At the end of the day, having those powerful partners is going to be huge. And so, Lake Pueblo, you're looking at 45 miles of trails. But the weird thing is it's like 45 miles of trails, and they're great trails, but we can't really talk about them. Well, we can talk about them. Southern Colorado Trail Builders can talk about them, and the state park kind of is able to acknowledge that they exist, because there's a couple that are technically legal that were built like 400,000 years ago or something like that. And then in the meantime, we are able to, market it, get the word out, and, we share pictures and stuff. But once it's official, then the trail system, the map will actually be on, the state park's website, and they'll be able to talk about it more and all that kind of stuff.
Well, kudos to you and your team and all the crew that have been working to get that partnership going and, continuing to be strong.
Yeah, it's been really great, and we've had a lot of great feedback and input from the community throughout the process. So you had asked me, I guess, prior to us recording, just about events too.
Yeah.
One thing that is important for us, for that group, for that organization, the Southern Colorado Trail Builders, is that we are getting not just biking, because it's bigger than that. It's like we want to get people that live in Pueblo outdoors onto these trails and on bikes. And so we've been running different clinics throughout the year, like we call them mountain bike 101s or hiking 101s, trail run 101s, drag people outside and say, if you go out for your first trail run, if you go out for your first mountain bike ride, what do you need? And lay it all out there, and then, lay out the basics of, here's how you want to be positioned on your bike. Here's blah, 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 blah. Ensuring that those people will hopefully feel comfortable enough to get out again, or meet a friend to do that. And we've had a lot of success with that. And then we also just have a big old party at the trails once a year called the Southern Colorado Trails Bash.
Well, that's cool. I would, even though I've definitely done my share of biking, and it would still be fun to go to a 101 type class and have somebody teach me something I didn't know, like what you just said about, sitting in the right position or doing, switching gears at the right time, like that kind of stuff that I probably would be like, I know all that. But then I would be like, oh, thank you. That is something new. But
there are some basics that we also have 201. In that one, I always, and this is for like every cyclist in the world. So everyone that rides bikes that is listening, and I'm guessing it's all of you since you're listening to the Morphology podcast, they're so useful, and you can practice them in your driveway. And it doesn't matter if you're going on a tour or you're going on a road ride or you're going on a mountain bike ride or you're going to go ride on your like local community path. The track stand is like the most useful skill ever. Period.
It's not just being showmansy.
I mean, of course it's fun, and that's what makes it fun to practice in your driveway. Right. Because you'd be like, it's a fun competition when you're just learning how to do it. But if you're on tour, whatever, if you're commuting through town and you need to stop at a red light and you're riding clipless and you don't have to unclip and put your foot down, or just if you get good enough at the track stand, then you have like you're constantly ready to like ride. If there's something behind you that you need to get out of the way, or if you're mountain biking and there's a rock in the trail that you are riding up to uphill and you need to pause for a second to get around it, well, you can do that if you have the balance. So it's just, it's very useful. You have better control of your bike. Like if you're able to track stand, you have this much more innate understanding of the behavior of your bike. And that's what makes it useful. It's not necessarily the track stand itself. It's like understanding the balance that goes into controlling your bike as such.
And I would definitely say balance is at the top of my list of things that I need to improve on. So, okay, good tip. I'll accept that as a good tip. A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show. Well, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about bike packing, because the photos that you have on social media with your bike fully loaded, or at least looks fully loaded, are really, really cool. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about bike packing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, bike packing, the things that my favorite way to recreate is type 2 plus fun. I love it. I mean, if I get to go do something all day, I mean, if I feel like I'm dragging it on, then I'm doing it right. And for me, I mean, I used to be a climber and a mountaineer, and I just loved that like sense of really getting immersed. I mean, specifically with mountaineering, you go out and you're probably spending more than a day doing it, even if you're just like going out to camp, so you're not, leaving at 2 a.m. or whatever. But I love the idea of making something more than one day, because the experience is just so much more complete for me. And also, what I love about bike packing versus mountaineering is that depending on where you live, so I will throw that caveat out there because maybe there are places where this simply is not feasible. Depending on where you live, there's a good chance that you can start the adventure at your front door. And that is a beautiful thing. You really sort of can, beyond choosing where you're going, route finding is like one of the best parts of the planning. Beyond choosing where you're going, you get to sort of choose how adventure-y you want that adventure to be. You can choose whether you want to go like ultra heavy and bring a whole bunch of crap and like, a waffle iron and whatever else,
Right.
or you are bringing like a bag of trail mix and a like Mylar bivy sack, and you have it all in a fanny pack or something, and you're going to do it ultralight and be miserable but probably still get some sleep.
So do you have any luxury items that you carry with you that you don't really need but you take anyway?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Okay,
So,
let's hear it.
when you're on a bikepacking trip, you could be on a department store bike that you got used from your grandpa, or some vintage mountain bike that is beautiful, or something super modern. It doesn't matter. And as long as you have shelter, food, water, you're going to survive.
Right.
And some basic bike maintenance stuff. Everything is a luxury. So my answer to that is everything. If I'm on one of my fancy bikepacking bikes, I have the salsa cutthroat that is this ridiculous machine that I always feel super bougie riding around on. And, the frame pack on it is handmade in Denver and it's beautiful. Check out JPacks, everybody, by the way. JPacks. But anyhow, yeah, the whole thing is full of it. And then, my stove, like, we wouldn't want to take 3 minutes to boil water with a normal stove. No, it's a jet boil, so it only takes a minute. And then beyond that, we've got I couldn't just bring a granola bar, so I have like a Cliff Builder bar. Yeah, it's even better. And I could make brown rice, but of course I've got like a backpacker pantry lasagna or some shit. So the answer is everything. And that's okay.
Right.
The beauty of that is that if everything is the luxury, if you look at it that way, and I need to learn to look at it this way, is if you understand what your essentials really are, then you're able, when you need to, really pare it down. And I need to get better at that.
Well, and the bottom line is you're still responsible to carry all of it. So if you have your fancy bags that you can put all this stuff in, then why not?
Exactly. Yeah, that happened on the trip this weekend. My friend said, "I'm glad you brought all that crap because I haven't ridden in a while."
Perfect. Oh, that's awesome.
So for me, yeah, bikepacking, I love it because it forces you to unplug because of the length of time you're gone for. And it's pretty easy for me to I take pictures, but I try to do it with a camera, so I'm not on my phone. When I'm thinking, when I'm preparing for a bikepacking trip, that is when I feel like it's like half the experience, because the anticipation, it almost gives me some sort of solace. Like, I know that I'm going to unplug from the world and it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to be on my bike. And when you're preparing for a bikepacking trip, then it sort of forces you to pore over maps. And there's a beauty to maps, in my opinion, whether it's, physical or digital. You really have to put yourself into that place when you're staring at this thing and problem solve and think, okay, well, I want to be on a dirt road or a trail, and I want to make, I don't want it to be like a busy dirt road, so it probably needs to be kind of a crappy dirt road. So I need to look for something that hopefully isn't closed. And so there's sort of a lot of unknowns in the process of planning it. And then, so with that aspect, I really enjoy the anticipatory adventure of it, where you're sort of exploring that way. And then with packing your gear, I think it's fun in a different way, because for me, it's sort of a opportunity to make fun of myself on a regular basis. It's every time I pack for a bikepacking trip and I lay it all out, I'm like, God, I know that is way more stuff than I need, but it'll probably all fit. And you have to think about, okay, well, what's the temperature going to be like? Is it supposed to rain? How hard is it going to rain?
Right.
I mean, do I need to bring like a Gore-Tex jacket, or just like a running jacket thing that is way lighter but way miserable if it's really raining out?
And the best part about that prepping and the excitement of it is that when you have, let's say you have everything laying out on your bed, like, oh, this is what I absolutely have to take. And then that moment when you realize you don't have the space for all of it. And then you've got to think, okay, what am I going to leave behind? Like, is it 10% chance of rain or 90% chance of rain? Like, the jacket's not going. So,
by the way, you raise a great point there, which I don't do, which is trying to whittle it down to the utter essentials. I've never bothered to do that. I just lay it all out. And that makes so much sense. And then you have to redefine what is essential.
Yeah.
In this time of defining what is essential, huh?
Right.
So my bikes, so I have 3 bikes.
Okay.
But the two that I use for bikepacking are like if I'm going to be going on something that's, gnarlier trails, more technical and likely just like rougher. I have a Trek Stash, which is a 29 plus bike, and that's my primary mountain bike. And I have, it does have a, suspension fork on it. So for people that want to geek out on it, it's a Trek Stash, aluminum frame with a 120 millimeter Fox fork on it, and then a dropper post. And for my longer rides, I threw a Brooks Cambium saddle on it, which has worked really well for me on the longer rides. And then I put a really fancy wheel set on it. That was fun. I saved up for that guy. So it has a carbon wheel set on it from Nexty. That's who makes the rims, and Hope hubs. And I've been really pleased with Hope's hubs. I haven't had any issues with them. I have beat on them real hard for a long time. Same with the rims. Same with Nexty's rims, actually. They have gone through the ringer. I mean, they have been, that poor hardtail has been enduroed and and has been ridden hard, fully loaded. So, I mean, with all my gear, and they have been like arrow straight. So that wheel set is bomb proof, and I recommend Nexty, and I am like in no way affiliated with them. They're just awesome. And so that's that bike. That's my mountain bike. I have a Salsa Cutthroat, which was a bike that I drooled over for a very long time. I dream of doing the Tour Divide. So, I mean, that bike, of course, they nailed it with the branding. I mean, stupid maps on the down tube, man, I got to have it. That bike, I just always thought it was so cool because I have, and I will describe my third bike in a moment, but I have like this touring bike. It's a Surly Crosscheck, and it's just like, it wants to be a gravel bike, but man, it just isn't unless I'm in the mood to be like really rattled around. And so the Cutthroat, it's this, full carbon thing of beauty that runs full-size 29-inch tires with these big, wide, flared-out drop bars, and it's got its size for a frame bag big enough to fit like a queen-size bed, I'm pretty sure. And that bike is so much fun. I mean, I have been blatantly irresponsible on that bike, and it has come through every single time.
Nice.
Yeah, there's something about a bike that is light enough to really ride on normal gravel roads all day long, and then you could take it down gnarly single track and turn out just fine. I mean, this past weekend, a friend and I, he actually also just bought a Cutthroat. I've had mine for a while, but he was like thinking about it, and I invited him on this trip, and he's like, "That's it." And
sold.
Yeah, and he just got one, and we took those bikes down very steep, very rocky, rutted out trails, and we both lived to tell the tale.
Awesome.
So, yeah, the Cutthroat, 10 out of 10 Adams recommend that bicycle. It's, if I had to, I'd probably keep just that one. And yeah, so that's the one that I'll ride if I'm going to be riding something that's really long and doesn't have anything that's particularly crazy, or I'll walk it, which is what we did this past weekend. And then my third bike is a Surly Crosscheck with Jones bars and like some Schwalbe Marathon tires on it, and it's from when I worked at a bike shop in graduate school. And so it's like the total bike shop employee bike, where it's your Surly frame and like all these fancy bits on it that don't need to be that fancy, but there they are. And that's that bike.
Those are 3 awesome options when you're checking out what you're going to ride for that day.
Yes. Yeah. And the Surly does come in handy when I'm going to be carrying a ton of stuff, because I can put front and rear racks on it.
Well, let's get into, it made me think of it when you said, adding lots of stuff on your bike. Your daughter also is into cycling, and from the photos, she looks like she's pretty comfortable, like on a single track. So I'm assuming that wasn't a staged photo. There was a video of her like cruising along on a single track, and you're like kind of coaching her or yelling.
Oh, yeah.
Or yelling. Like,
yeah, it's probably yelling at her to charge it. I think I might know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It was definitely words of encouragement, and she was like, you could tell she was having a blast. But how did that progress?
Yeah, well, I mean, she's been through it. That's for sure. So, as I explained, biking has been a huge part of my life for a long time. For me, it was like, I wouldn't even say it was an option. And I don't mean that as in like she'd be punished if she hated biking, because that's not the case. If she hated it, like, okay, fine, I'd suck it up and move on with my life. Because of how big a part of my life cycling is, I just made a point to ensure that there weren't any barriers. Like, that's something I'm big on, whether I'm coaching somebody that I just met or I'm working with my daughter. It's like, you just try to remove as many barriers as you can to their enjoyment of it or their learning of it or whatever. We started her on the Strider bike, which was key. And that worked really well to get her comfortable. And we just always pushed her. A big part of her learning to ride a bike pretty early on, because we got her onto a pedal bike. I don't even know, maybe it was like 3. Yeah, it's all just a blur at this point. But yeah, the whole time that she was learning, we just made a point of removing any barriers that could have possibly kind of snagged the progress for her. So, we started her out on the Strider bike so she could get the balance first instead of the training wheels. And everyone has their own methods. It's just, this is what worked for us. And it's what worked really well. From the Strider bike, we made a point of, I wanted to avoid anything that she would have to relearn. So I didn't want to have a coaster brake, because I knew that when she went onto her bigger bike after her first pedal bike, like anything beyond a 16-inch, it's, you're not going to want it to be a coaster brake, because if you're doing anything long or technical, it's awkward. So we made a point of getting a bike and investing in a bike that was one that had a freewheel, which seems really simple, but it's really hard to find a bike with a freewheel that's 16-inch. It's kind of crazy, actually. And from there, we just always rode with her. We always pushed her, and when she was learning, there were all these different phrases that when we're working through the difficulties of this, that just became like mantras. And one of the big ones was, do we cry or do we try?
Ooh,
and that's
nice.
one that we still use. Another one, how do we get better at anything? And that was one point I wanted to make it clear. Like, it's not just biking that you can get better at with practice. It's anything. And so since she was 3 and we're practicing the bike, it's always been, if she's feeling frustrated with something, it's like, Cora, how do we get better at anything? Practice.
Yeah. Well, then speaking of practice, like, what are some of her skills that she has? I mentioned, maybe it's a spoiler alert, I already mentioned Singletrack, but did she go bikepacking with you?
So she hasn't gone mountain bike packing with me yet, but we did ride the Mickelson Trail in South Dakota. We rode that together. So last summer, so she was 6 when we did that, the Mickelson Trail. So we did, it was about 130 miles, I think, that we did of it.
Oh, and she pedaled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She pedaled the whole time. So she rode her own bike. And that's when she was, so she was on her 20-inch. Her bike was a 16-inch Spawn something. I forget which model it is, but it was Spawn's 16-inch bike. And that was like their little freewheel front and rear V-brakes kids bike that was, lightweight. And then for her 20-inch bike, we had put her on an Orbea MX-20 disc. Or something like that, I think is the name. But we just made a point of searching for bikes that wouldn't be any barrier, and her second bike, it had disc brakes and 7 speeds and just the full gamut of a grown-up bike, but it was 20-inch pretty much.
And a 6-year-old learning, how to shift gears and using disc brakes, that's epic.
Well, kids are capable of so much more than we give them credit for. It's just that you have to put the time in. And that's why whenever I talk to parents about this, because I've had friends ask, how can we get Jimmy to do that? And the answer is, you got to go out and you got to do it. And so, leading up to that trip to ride the Mickelson Trail with her, we're looking at doing, 20 to 30, I think 8 miles was our longest day on that trip. And so we couldn't just jump into that. That's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
And so we drew out a training plan, and we had taken a really cool picture of her on her bike and printed it on this thing, and there was a graph. And so that way we could, color in the squares of the miles that we did each day and build up. And, we would go out, every other day, and we would intentionally say okay, on this date, we're planning on doing 10 miles, because we live right next to the Arkansas River. Well, not on it, but we're near it. And there's a river trail that goes through Pueblo.
Oh, okay.
And you can throw down 20 miles of uninterrupted pedestrian and cycling trail with no cars, none, right next to the river. So we would ride on that river trail. There were times, and on the longer rides, there were times where she was super pissed. She's a 6-year-old. She don't want to deal with that. And that's where you're really paying your dues as a parent, to get your kid used to riding a bike for that long, to get them used to shifting gears and understanding what the front brake is versus the rear brake and how they feel different when you use them. You need to be out there. I mean, a lot of times it's easy to just want to, go for a short ride with the kids and then go do your own thing. But it's an investment you make, because then they're ready to play at your level way sooner. We spent probably 3 or 4 months building up to get ready for this long tour.
Nice.
And, then on the tour, all but the days that were literally all uphill, she was pedaling herself. So we did, the Mickelson Trail all on our own bikes. And, Dad was the pack mule, loaded down on the good old cross check. And on the steeper hills on that trip, we used this thing that was called the Weehoo, or not a Weehoo. That's like the seated thing. I don't know. It's some weird Yahoo sounding name, but it's essentially like a ski joring stretchy nylon webbing thing that you girth hitch around your seat post, or in my case, the back of my rack, and then clipped it onto a loop on her stem. And so that way, like if I'm pulling her, it's not like a sharp shock. It's kind of stretchy.
Okay, but she's still on her own bike.
Oh yeah, she's still on her own bike completely. I mean, she still has to steer, and the rule is that because I could feel if she wasn't pedaling, and so when we were on that tour, every time we're on a hill, if she stopped pedaling, I'd say, Cora, I'm going to cut the umbilical cord, and then you're going to have to walk your bike up this thing. And yeah, I mean, it's I mean, some parents are probably going to hear that and be like, man, that's really harsh. And the answer is, yes, it is. But boy, does it work.
Right. In biking with a family, especially when you have young kids like that, it's definitely a completely different experience than when you're out with the guys, doing whatever it is that guys do when they have their bikes packed up. But like you said, the reward is so worth the effort that you put in ahead of time.
Yes, it absolutely is. And actually, something you said there reminds me of something that is equally important to her, training to be able to push herself to do this. And that is the fact that she is training and learning how to try hard through things. And specifically as a girl, I mean, we're fortunate that we have a lot of very powerful, awesome, badass women in our life that she gets to look up to.
Cool.
But through this whole time of whether it's, with swimming she loves swimming, or with biking or, anything, she loves the idea of the tough girl. We've made a point of tying that together with this. And yeah, I mean, that's something that like we've always made a point of, not only just, when we're working through things with her,
mm-hmm.
Reminding her like, yeah, you're tough, you're great. That's what girls can be if they want to be, and all these things. But also, if she always notices, like if we're watching a bikepacking movie, because man, we watch a lot of those on bikepacking.com. that is a fantastic resource. But if there isn't a girl, whether it's like in a biking movie or in a book we're reading or something, she'll be like, well, where are the girls?
Nice. As she should. Question.
Yes. The trips with her and getting her ready, it's been one of the most rewarding things that I've done as a parent, because it is something that is a huge part of my life. It is one of the things that has given me the independence and the confidence that I have. I mean, at least, part of that foundation. And I get to share it with her. I mean, when I went on my trip, like she wanted to go. She wants to go on these things. And she sort of like, she understands what suffering is too. I mean, I always joke with her after rides or races that I've done, like, how was it, Dad? Like, it was good. I suffered. And she had done this. There's a triathlon in town called the Mini Mortals. So it's something like, it's all like shortish distances, but it's still enough to make them hurt. And when she finished that last year, which was the first time she'd done it, it's like, Cora, how was it? She's like, I suffered.
That's awesome. And, obviously we are recording this. We're still deep in this pandemic with COVID-19. With that set aside, do you guys have adventures that you're hoping to do this summer or this spring?
Yes, actually. So there's a bikepacking route that we really want to do this summer, and we had been planning to do as a family. And we just got a mountain bike for my wife, a Jameis Dragon Slayer that I'm pretty excited about, with the best name ever.
Yeah.
And Cora just grew out of her 20-inch. We just got her a new bike too. It's been a bike buy-in year for the ladies. But we just got her a Cleary Scout 24-inch.
Okay.
And then added a bunch of really shiny purple bits, and people should totally go look at that thing on my Instagram because it is gorgeous.
Awesome.
It's awesome. So we are going to load up, and when it feels responsible to do so, because I mean, these small mountain towns, I'm very mindful of not going into town to do things. I try to avoid that if we can. if it becomes feasible and responsible, there's a route outside of Salida that is listed on bikepacking.com, and it's called the maybe Aspen Ridge Family Overnighter or something. I think it even has family in the title. It's one that's not crazy. It's on gravel roads. It is aptly named because there's aspens along the route, and thus lots of nice shady spots to rest when it's necessary. And it's only 35 miles or something like that. It's pretty short. That was the route that I wanted to take both my wife and Cora on for their first bikepacking proper experience.
Sure.
Because we get to get out of Dodge, which always feels good because, there's nothing familiar. So it's harder to worry about the things you're familiar with, work or the dogs or whatever, anything. The thing is a 7-year-old worries about, who knows? Yeah, I had some other ones planned, but I just I don't know if it's feasible. We had a full adventure sheet for this summer. I wanted to do a section of the Colorado Trail. I wanted to do that solo, and it just wasn't something that I don't think it could happen now. So another one that I wanted to do, they call it the Aspen Ridge Loop. That's the one in Salida. And Salida is an awesome, awesome little mountain town in Colorado with an amazing biking scene. It is phenomenal.
A quick interruption to tell you this week's sponsor is Thirsty Pigs, a full-service mobile event company offering beer, wine, spirits, plus catering for any indoor or outdoor event. Check out more at thirstypigs.com. Now back to the show.
And then also out of Salida, there is a route called the Vapor Trail, and that is a much more technical bikepacking route. So that's one that I was going to do solo or with friends that were up to it. But that one goes through old mining camps and it uses the Monarch Crest Trail, which is one of the best sections of mountain bike trail in the country. It's amazing. So yeah, but with the family, Aspen Ridge Loop is up there. And then we're going to have to kind of get creative because we just need to see what's feasible, at this point. So, but we've been doing a lot of rides out at Lake Pueblo, and we found a new opportunity to get out there and then jump in the lake and then keep rolling, which is a good refresher, especially for the mermaid creature that is my daughter and wants to be in the water at all times.
Well, I have just one more question for you, and it's about inspiration. Based on all your experience and, being able to be out with your daughter and out with your friends and bikepacking, what would you tell people who have the dream to bike pack, but they haven't pulled the trigger yet?
Oh, that's a great question. It makes me want to sit down with all of them and just chat about what they're afraid of. Let me rephrase that. Not what they're afraid of, because I don't think it's fear that stops people. I feel like it's just a lack of. Yeah, I don't think people. I don't think people like to feel afraid. I don't think that's a good way to describe them. The people who haven't done it yet, though, I think it's just maybe not feeling ready. And I think that the key barriers there for people, I was just talking about this exact thing with my friend Mike over the weekend. I'd like to circle back to your question, but there are two key skills that I think are super important. And one is going to make people laugh, and the other one's going to seem like a no-brainer. I'll start with the no-brainer, and that is fixing a flat. I think that is one of the barriers to people doing longer rides, right? If I ride my bike 20 miles somewhere where I'm allowed to camp and I get a flat, that is going to be this whole process, and I'm going to be frustrated, or maybe I'll be embarrassed or whatever if I have to make a phone call and get picked up. It's going to be a bummer. And so knowing how to fix a flat is one of the biggest barriers to people going on longer bike rides or overnighters. And so that is a skill that I insist that people practice, and you can do it on YouTube. You can go to the store, you can buy a couple tubes, tire levers, whatever. Just Google what you need to fix a flat. Don't use a screwdriver.
No.
Ruin your tires.
And it's easy to pack those simple, the tire lever, a spare tube, or even a patch kit if you're not into carrying a tube. So, you learn it and then carry it with you.
Exactly. And so that's something that people can practice at home. That's a skill they can build at home. The next one you can't build at home, or at least unless you don't live close to neighbors. The second one is pooping in the woods, right? Most people can handle the pee thing. They can make it happen. Pooping in the woods is a different animal. And that is the other thing that I think is a barrier to to people bikepacking or camping, for that matter, if there are not bathrooms at the campground where they're camping. So, I mean, I think that pooping in the woods is like the barrier for people that might be interested in like backcountry overnight experiences, because they've never learned how to do it well without it being like super awkward or like potentially disgusting if they have not executed it properly. I mean, there are some very unfortunate experiences one could have by doing this wrong, and it's totally feasible to do it right and like actually enjoy it, or at least feel clean when you're done.
Yes, so, feel better than holding it until you get home.
Exactly. And so that's the other thing that's a barrier to bikepacking, is pooping in the woods. And that's another one that, like, I don't know, maybe I need to make a video for this. I've never bothered pooping in the woods because I feel like I was fortunate enough to have been trained from an early age, and Cora totally is. That is key. Yeah, she's all about it. But I think it's the barrier. I mean, long bike rides, you need to be able to fix it flat. Otherwise, that's like the barrier that'll stop you.
Yep.
And then overnight in the backcountry, what if I need to poop? Oh man, that's the thing. So well, those are the two skills.
I was going to say, if you take those two skills, one of them you can easily YouTube. The other one, probably not. So you'd have to just really put some thought into it. Maybe practice in your backyard or something, or on a bucket.
I mean, I wouldn't poop in your backyard. I don't think you need to actually I need to think about this.
Yeah. And I was going to say, people who follow you on Instagram can message you personally and get your tips.
No, I'm serious. Maybe I need to make a video.
Maybe, yeah.
That's going to be my
pants
my
on,
million
of course.
Hit,
pants
$4
on.
revenue. Oh yeah, of course, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to make dozens of cents on YouTube with this idea.
Okay, cool. I'll be your first sponsor.
Yeah. So, what would I tell people who have the dream to bike pack? The answer to that is, you should go do it. I mean, all you need to do is make sure that the weather is good. Don't go when. Avoid the days with crappy weather. Remove the barriers that you can. So like the pooping thing, the tube thing, remove those barriers. Learn how to do it first so you don't have to worry about it. Check the weather. Make sure that you're going on the days when it's at least reasonable. If it's going to be potentially miserable and you don't have the gear for it, you don't want to deal with that. So remove that barrier. Save it for when the weather is good. And then don't overthink it. If you don't, oh my gosh, I don't have anything to cook. Like, bring 4 Snickers bars. You will survive.
Right.
And, you don't need a Camelback. You could bring a gallon jug of water in, like, a $10 backpack from Walmart. Yep. It doesn't matter. And I think that that's one of the more important things to remember, is that you don't need fancy gear. And what's been refreshing about, I feel like there's a whole spectrum of the bikepacking culture. And it runs from like the salsa cutthroats of the world, and like I feel so bougie riding that thing, but I love that bike. And with these fancy custom bags and all that jazz, and like ultralight sleeping bag and blah bitty blurbity blurb. And then on the flip side of that, you have somebody riding like a 1991 rock hopper in the Silk Road race. That actually happened. I'm pretty sure that's what he was riding. But there was it's just like a bike that you could buy used for $50 that's going to hold up just fine.
Right.
Or it's really just the sense of adventure and a little bit of planning and removing the barriers that you can. So, the weather, the skills to make sure that you're being safe, and then bringing the critical things. If you have like a tarp and a gallon of water, 1,000 calories with you, you are not going to die. And you'll probably have an amazing time. Even if the weather is crap and a raccoon eats half your food. So,
and the best part of even those crappy adventures is once you get home and get over it and take a shower, it becomes some of the best stories to share.
Exactly. I like to say that adversity is the spice of life.
Yeah.
And another thing is, time is the ultimate currency. So if you're thinking of bikepacking, don't spend your time thinking about it. Just break down those barriers and go do it.
Awesome. Well, before I say goodbye, do you want to plug your trail building association? Like, I assume it's nonprofit, or is there any other organizations you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah. If people want to be in Southern Colorado, and they want to check it out. So there are some great organizations down here, but Southern Colorado Trail Builders is the main trail advocacy group in Pueblo,
Mm-hmm.
and our website is either lakepueblotrails.org or southerncoloradotrailbuilders.org. And then we also have a neighboring group right over in Canyon City, which is not too far from us, and they are joinfar.org. So that's for Fremont Adventure Recreation, and they're doing some incredible stuff over there. Honestly, there are some really impressive groups that are doing great work in Salida, like the Salida Mountain Trails group is doing great work. And here I am rambling, but if you're interested, if you want to learn more about routes and events and things that make us feel inspired and on fire, go to lakepueblotrails.org or southerncoloradotrailbuilders.org to learn more.
Yeah.
Or follow us on Facebook.
Well, Adam, what a treat this has been. I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I look forward to seeing your next adventures on social media.
Oh, yeah, they'll be there. And yeah, I look forward to listening to more of your podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's it for this week. A big thank you to Adam for taking the time to come on the show. Go to southerncoloradotrailbuilders.org to find out more about Pueblo trails. And of course, if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting, email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. You can go to murphologypodcast.com to find all kinds of good info. And I recently launched a YouTube channel. So if you want to see videos of the places I bike, check that out. I'll leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from Arthur Conan Doyle. When the spirits are low, when the day appears dark, when work becomes monotonous, when hope hardly seems worth having, just mount a bicycle and go out for a spin down the road, without thought on anything but the ride you're taking. Think about it.